Modern view of man is that man is just a more highly developed animal. There's nothing particularly unique about man except we're just more highly developed than other animals. We're just material things. We don't have a immortal spiritual soul, right? And this is from a children's book. And you see the little mammal over in the corner from which we've all descended is a little rodent, all right? So we're just a different kind of rodent, right? A more highly developed rodent. And just a quick view of the difference between modern values and Christian truth. The modern world thinks about man as being sovereign over all. There's nothing above man. There's no God, there's no angels. Man's the top of the heap. And so we don't have to be subordinate to anything because we are the top of the heap. The Christian view is that this is God's universe, and God's a loving God and a good God. And it's a fantastic thing that there is such a God who can guide us and direct us in this world. We don't feel oppressed by the presence of a God. We feel loved by God. God's a loving Father who helps us in this world. The modern view, more or less, is that suffering is useless. In fact, people who suffer too much are sometimes considered to be losers, that they just won't take the steps that they need to do in order to get rid of their suffering, even if that might mean in the end assisted suicide or euthanasia. Suffering is just something that, if you really got your act together, you shouldn't be suffering, right? And the Christian view is that suffering is an absolute part of life. It's necessary for our salvation. That you won't be able to become the Christian you're meant to be unless you actually suffer a lot. And we're all going to have suffering that's not so well understood sometimes by other people, what we're suffering. And it has redemptive value. It unites us with Christ on the cross. And so we're becoming more Christ-like as we suffer, especially if we can learn to unite our sufferings with Christ and offer our sufferings up for others. I'm learning more and more. I mean, I'm getting old, but you think I've learned these things a long time ago. But the whole idea of just I had a spiritual director years ago who I would tell about some suffering, and he'd say, what student is having a hard time? Why don't you offer that up for that student, right? And I know many priests fast for their parishioners and fast for someone that they're caring for, saying, I'm going to win some graces for this person through my suffering. So suffering becomes less something that you just absolutely are fleeing from to something you're, in a sense, almost embracing. I've got another thing that I can offer up for someone. The modern view, very important, is there's no life after death. If there's no life after death, then this is all there is. And why do we have to abide by any rules or can be concerned about right and wrong? It's pretty much what you can get away with. And if it's only in this world, why live for others? Why not just live for yourself? If this is the only life there is, it's all you've got. So maximize what you've got in this world. Whereas the Christian believes that we have an eternal destiny with God, that God wants us to be with Him for an eternity. And this is just we're strangers in a strange land. We're passing through, right? And that's why Christians can give up an enormous amount of things, take jobs that don't have a high salary, right? Not seek to have fine clothes and fine things and fine houses. Not that those things are bad, and it's okay, but those should never be our highest values. Those should never be something that's the reason we live, is to get a better car and a better house and have a better vacation. But it's really about how we can give to others. So one kind of statement about the modern view of man. I don't really mean to insult Justin Bieber here. I changed it just the other day because I was speaking to high school kids, and I didn't think they know who Mick Jagger was. So I had Mick Jagger up here. I should have changed it back for this group. Justin Bieber is apparently on a Christian path right now. He's been a Christian and he's returned, and we should all pray for Justin Bieber. But he was off the track for a while, and the whole notion is you want to get as much pleasure out of life as you can. And you want to, again, buy as many things. You want to have the best cars and the best everything. You're an individual. You do not want to submit to anybody else or any set of rules besides your own. You're a relativist. You don't think there's any absolute values. There's no God. There's no afterlife. Rules are just relative to what our culture or even ourselves want them to be. And we're skeptical. We think there's no such thing as knowledge. You can't know anything for certain. I think some of these slides are not going to come up the way I wanted to. I got something a little out of place here. Okay, but the freedom, so we have a distorted view of freedom in the modern age. We largely think of it as doing whatever I want whenever I want. If you ask a young person what they think freedom is, they will say it's doing whatever I want whenever I want. No restrictions on me at all. So that's how we approach sex, whatever I want, whenever I want, with whomever I want. We want a lot of money because it liberates us. We might become a kind of a Hitler if we had the power, because might makes right. There's nothing that curtails what we can do. It's what I want. So if he wants his freedom by getting rid of Jews, then go for it. And I think the bottom little bus here, a charter bus of Always a Pleasure, the pleasure cruise bus. Again, I think we're largely hedonists. We seek our own pleasure. And a sign of that is, I mean, this troubles me when I see adults, and I've been one of them. It says to young people as they're leaving somewhere, you say, just have fun, right? Just have fun. I say, what? Do young people need an exhortation to just have fun? I mean, they're likely to be too serious unless we exhort them to just have fun? Or should we say something like, don't do anything stupid, all right? Don't get arrested, all right? Do something meaningful, do something worthwhile, do something kind. But we say just have fun. As though fun, well, we always say things, at least we had fun. As if that's somehow that something that cleanses everything, as long as it was fun. I love fun. I'm from a fun-loving family, but the notion that that's way, way high on our priorities. Now, it is true that freedom defines the human person. Every other living creature is programmed to do what it does. It acts by instinct. We have the dog chasing the cat, chasing the mouse, going after the cheese. They don't make choices about that. But a dog seeing a cat go by, oh, chase or not chase, maybe this one, maybe not that one. They don't do it. They act by instinct. But human beings, all day long, we're faced with a crossroad. From the minute we get up or don't get up in the morning, in bed, we're saying, should I stay a bit longer or should I get up? It's the first battle of every single day. I lose it every single day. And I mean every single day. I'm retired now, so now I can justify it. But before that, I had other. I'm going to be this. If I get to be a saint, I'm going to be the saint of rationalizations. So if you need a good rationalization for something, just pray to me after I die, and you will get something awesome that justifies things you can't believe. That you've made a resolution now. 10 minutes ago, you made a resolution not ever to do this again. 10 minutes later, you want to do it. I will give you the rationalization for doing that. I'm good. Okay, so this is John Paul II in Evangelium Vitae. He talks about this false view of freedom. He says, when freedom out of a desire to emancipate itself from all forms of tradition and authority shuts out even the most obvious evidence of an objective and universal truth, which is the foundation of personal and social life, then the person ends up by no longer taking as the sole and indisputable point of reference for his own choices the truth about good and evil, but only his subjective and changeable opinion, or indeed his selfish interest in whim. You just won't find too many modern people saying, I want to be guided by the truth in everything I do. I want to know the truth. I want to know the truth about the human person, about sexuality, about the meaning of life, and that is going to be my beacon for whatever I do in the world. Most people just want to, what do I feel like? What do I want? What's my whim or my fancy right now, right? And that's how we tend to program our lives or live our lives. We don't think that we have to the most important thing is figuring out what the truth is and living in accord with the truth. Right? So our culture values what is known as autonomy. It comes from two Greek words, autos and nomos, meaning a law unto yourself. Right? Same picture. All right. And John Paul II says about in a time of autonomy, of doing whatever I want. I'm a law unto myself. I don't need to abide by anybody else's laws. Well, okay, maybe the laws of society, because otherwise I'll go to jail. But other than that, if I don't want God telling me what to do, I don't want my parents, I don't want my culture, I want to do what I want to do. Right? And it could change week to week, day by day, just by my whim or fantasy. It says this view of freedom leads to a serious distortion of life and society. If the promotion of the self is understood in terms of absolute autonomy, people inevitably reach the point of rejecting one another. Everyone else is considered an enemy from whom one has to defend oneself. Thus, society becomes a mass of individuals placed side by side, but without any mutual bonds. Each one wishes to assert himself independently of the other, and in fact intends to make his own interests prevail. So, we now have these instances we all know about where we have women's sports and girls' sports are now being taken over by transgendered women, right? There will be no women's sports before long because the transgendered women, males who have become women, are going to win everything, right? So who is this young man who's transgendered to being a female? Who is he thinking of? Who is he thinking about? Is he thinking about all the women who have worked so hard to be competitive in sports? There's almost no mediocre man at a sport that can't beat an excellent woman as a sport. And I can't believe the world's allowing this. I can't believe feminists are allowing it. I can't believe parents are allowing it. But they're going to be winning Olympic medals. All Olympic medals are going to be won by transgendered females, right? We now say that bathrooms and locker rooms need to be open to whatever a person identifies as, right? Even if there's not been any hormone transition or any surgery, no matter what. If today you identify as the opposite sex, you are allowed to use the restrooms and the locker rooms of those people. Who are they thinking of? Are they thinking of all those girls there that don't want to be in a locker room with someone who's not their sex? The church has written some wonderful things about this. I'm going to give you just a little bit of like an appetizer of some of these things. This is a very recent document. You can't hardly see the title there, but it says "Male and Female, He Created Them," and it's one of the more turgid documents of the church, and that's saying a lot because a lot of them are turgid, meaning you have to slog through them, read sentences 2 or 3 times before you see what they're saying. But it's an excellent document on how gender ideology has taken over the thinking of our culture, right? It's actually was more advanced in Europe than it's been in the United States. Europeans have been working on gender ideology for many more years before it really caught on this side of the ocean. And this is what the first paragraph of that document says. It says it's becoming increasingly clear that we are now facing with what might accurately be called an educational crisis, especially in the field of affectivity and sexuality. In many places, curricula are being planned and implemented which allegedly convey a neutral conception of the person and of life, yet in fact reflect an anthropology opposed to faith and right reason. So my task here is to give you the Christian anthropology, which is in accord with faith and right reason. But this document says we're very confused, especially about gender and sexuality. I will be sharing this PowerPoint with people, so you don't need to worry about taking notes about anything you might want to follow up. So it says, the disorientation regarding anthropology, our understanding of the human person, which is widespread of our cultural landscape, has undoubtedly helped to destabilize the family as an institution, bringing with it a tendency to cancel out the differences between men and women, presenting them instead as merely the product of historical and cultural conditioning. I've lived long enough to see things flip-flop in all sorts of directions. At one point, there's no differences between men and women, except our bodies. We just happen to be in a different kind of body, but spiritually we're totally different, right? Or the same. In one instance, we're totally the same. And then there's other perspective that men and women are very different. So it's extremely important to have equal female representation on things because women are so different from men. I want to say if we're just a person inside a body, then why would we need equal representation? We're just persons that happen to occupy different bodies. But if there's something distinct about men and women, then it would seem a good idea in many contexts to have both a male and a female perspective because we bring something different to the mix. The document says, The Christian vision of anthropology sees sexuality as a fundamental component of one's personhood. You're not just a person. You're a male person or a female person, and that's not accidental. Accidental, honestly, and accidental in the philosophy I'm talking about doesn't mean it's by chance. It means it's something that's not at the very core of your being. It's not essentially who you are. The word essence is also problematic. But let's put it this way. The fact that I'm short or I'm tall, or I have gray hair or I dye my hair black, all right, those are accidental things. They don't get to the core of my being. But that I'm female and someone else is male, that it makes a huge difference in our relationship and our approach to the world. And so it says here that sexuality is a fundamental component of one's personhood. I mean, I'm all sorts of things. I'm half Slovenian and part Portuguese and American. You pick me out somewhere. And I mean, I go through customs, and customs officers look at me and they say, "Are you a professor?" What? Right? But obviously, I look like a professor. All right, that's who I am. I hope that's less obvious than that I'm a female. All right, but these are when we meet someone. First, they're a human being. They're not a dog. They're not a giraffe. We know they're a human being. And the second thing we notice right away is they're male or female. That's so fundamental. It's right away. And if we say someone, meet my friend Chris, I want you to meet my friend Chris this afternoon, then people might ask, male or female, right? Because that somehow tells us something about what we're going to be, who we're going to be meeting that day. So it says sexuality is one of its this is a bad translation. I'm sorry. I was looking for the translation, and I'll change this. This is an early translation of the Vatican document, so it's going to sound strange. It is one of its mode of being, of manifesting itself. Sexuality is one of our ways of being, of manifesting ourselves, communicating with others, and of feeling, expressing, and living human love. You know, if we heard that someone insulted my friend Chris, and Chris flattened that person, most of us are not going to think, oh, why did she do that? All right. That we know that men behave in a certain way more frequently than women. All right. We know this. So it's part of what we know about a person. Therefore, our sexuality plays an integral part in the development of our personality and in the process of its education. In fact, it is from their sex that the human person receives the characteristics which on the biological, psychological, and spiritual levels make that person a man or woman, and thereby largely condition his or her progress towards maturity and insertion into society. So our sexuality permeates every part of our being, our physiology, our psychology, our spirituality. It's not something that is just, I happen to be female or happen to be male. It's just permeates everything about our being. The postmodern view of both sexual identity and the family becomes subject to a liquidity and fluidity that characterize other aspects of postmodern culture, often founded on nothing more than a confused concept of freedom in the realm of feelings and wants, or momentary desires provoked by emotional impulses and the will of the individual, as opposed to anything based on the truths of existence. Again, our culture doesn't even believe there's such a thing as truth of existence. So it means that we can be any sex or gender that we want. You know the jokes about how many, 75, 300, I don't know how many genders there are. All right, that we just have all these, whatever we want to be. And then we can have, there's many different diverse forms of families, right? There's not one form of family that is the norm. I mean, certainly there's many forms of family by fact, but that we should be striving to have a certain form of the family, that it's best for the man and the woman and the children and the culture, is something that we no longer want to admit. We want to say all families, all forms of families are equal. So we'll do a little Christian view of the human person. Many different sources for this. One is a series of talks, the Theology of the Body by John Paul II. There's marvelous courses on the theology of the body. There's a Theology of the Body Institute that has week-long courses every summer. They have a series of 8 or 10 of them that many people take, and I'd highly recommend it. It's like going on a retreat. people they just love it. They go and there's prayer and there's confession and there's mass and there's lectures and you're in a beautiful retreat area, go walk in the woods. Highly recommended. This was John Paul II's work, and his thinking has infiltrated, if you will, influenced documents of the church. One is Mulieris Dignitatem, the dignity of women, and that's a beautiful document for any woman and man who wants to understand what it is to be a Christian woman. This is a marvelous document to read. John Paul II honestly held women up on a pedestal, right? He had a hard time seeing that we could be vicious and lazy and jealous and manipulative. And I don't know any such women myself, but I've heard there's such people. But he has a really beautiful view of femininity. The theology of the body identifies itself. Right from the beginning, the theology of the body is bound up with the creation of man in the image of God. That's the Christian view. We're not just a more highly developed animal. We are made in the image and likeness of God. I think if I thought people were just a more highly developed rodent, all right, I will run over rodents, all right? I will put poison out there to get rid of rodents, all right? And if I thought human beings were rodents, I would get rid of the ones that were unpleasing. Not that I think any rodent's going to be pleasing to me, but I mean, our culture now, there's segments of our cultures that would be very happy to wipe out whole other segments of our culture. They'd be very happy to not have them exist if they could legally get away with it, because they consider us to be less than fully human, hate-filled, whatever. If you see every human being is being made in the likeness and image of God, you're going to have to respect every human being. You're going to have to see every human being as a beloved son and daughter of God. And we know that God loves that person, and he wants us to love that person. So hate really becomes out of the question. And that everything we're to do for other people is to help them become more godlike. That's our job, right? So it becomes, in a way, the theology of the body, also the theology of sex. Because what the theology of the body says is our sexuality is one of the ways in which we're made in the image and likeness of God. Okay, the tradition has kind of talked about us as being rational animals, right? Human beings are rational animals. So all I have in this room are rational animals. But the theology of the body says, no, your body shows, the very makeup of your body shows that you're outward directed and you're meant to be in union with other people. And that people, God's a lover. God's not just rational and free, right? God is primarily a lover and lives in a community of persons who love each other. If you ask Aristotle what God does, we believe there was a prime mover. What does the prime mover, who is divine, what's he do for all eternity? Father Ed. He's thought. He's thought, thinking, thought. That's what God is. And what does that mean? It means the highest activity is thinking. That's the highest activity you can do. And therefore God, who is the highest thing, must engage in the highest activity of all time. And since he's the highest creature, he must be thinking of himself all the time, because who else would he think of? That'd be thinking of something inferior. So God's thought, thinking, thought. What do we think God is? We think God's a trinity of lovers, persons who love each other, and out of their love, we get the creation of the whole universe, right? And we're meant to be lovers. So theology of the body becomes, in a way, theology of sex, or rather the theology of masculinity and femininity, which has its starting point in Genesis. So John Paul II will say, if we want to understand the human person, we actually have to start with Genesis, right? Because that's where we're first made. We're made in the image and likeness of God. This Michelangelo picture is much worth thinking about, right? That eye to eye, yes, lower than God, but still right up there in the heavens with God. We're told. This is in Dignitas Mulieris. The revealed truth concerning man as the image and likeness of God constitutes the immutable basis of all Christian anthropology. God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them. So what the theology of the body tells us, when Adam was created, that was not honestly the creation of mankind. that was the creation of one human being. But one human being isn't a complete human being. There needs to be another. He says this concise passage contains the fundamental anthropological truths. Man is the high point of the whole order of creation in the visible world. As you recall, everything else that's made, God makes one after another, and then he stops, and he sort of starts all over again with man, right? Because he's not making them out of everything else. He's distinctly making man, right? It's the high point of the whole order of creation in the visible world. The human race, which takes its origin from the calling into existence of man and woman, crowns the whole work of creation. Both man and woman are human beings to an equal degree. Both are created in God's image. This image and likeness of God, which is essential for the human being, is passed on by man and woman as spouses and parents to their descendants. Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it. The Creator entrusts dominion over the earth to the human race, to all persons, to all men and women who derive their dignity and vocation from the common beginning. Here's another huge difference between the modern view and the Christian view. The modern world takes everything as kind of raw material that I can change into anything I want to. It's not a gift from God. It's just stuff that's out there. So I can do anything I want to with the stuff that's out there. The Christian sees everything as a gift from God. And we really have to respect everything. The love of the church now, or the promotion of love for the environment, is very Christian. This is a gift from God, and we need to protect this gift that we got. We can't do anything we want to with it. All right, well, as we recall, Adam spent some time naming the animals, and that's how he came to realize he was alone. And it's interesting, up to this point, God kept saying, it's good that I created the waters, and that's good. I created the heavens, and that's good. I created the animals of the sea, and that's good. And then he talks to Adam, and he says, looks at Adam, and they talk to each other, and they say, well, the Lord God said, it's not good for the man to be alone. That's the first thing we hear. It's not good. It's not good for man to be alone. That's amazing self-criticism, if we will, of God. All right? I've made everything else and it's good, but it's not good for man to be alone. I'll make a suitable partner for him. You notice that doesn't say maid or servant or minion. All right? It says suitable partner. So we have Eve created out of the rib of Adam. One of my jokes is that Adam was created out of mud, right? But the female was created out of the rib of a rational creature. And I think that explains a lot when you think about it. One man afterwards says it explains why I'm treated like dirt a lot, right? But John Paul II loves this passage when Adam says, the man exclaimed, this at last is bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. This is to be called woman, for this was taken from man. Right? And this is a physical description, but John Paul II says, no, we hear in here that Adam is saying, finally, someone like me, but different from me. Right? And that's the male and female joy. Here's someone like me, but different from me. Someone who completes me. I'm not complete without the other. I'm meant to be in relationship with others. I'm not meant to be isolated and alone. As a matter of fact, John Paul II talks about Adam being in a state of really original solitude, which is uncomfortable, right? None of us really like absolute aloneness. We want something to lean on somewhere, someone we can call, someone we can depend upon. And he says, well, this is what the woman was meant for, and the man for the woman. It's reciprocal. The woman is another I in a common humanity. From the very beginning, they appear as a unity of the two, and this signifies that the original solitude is overcome. The solitude in which man does not find a helper or a partner for him. It is only a question here of a helper in activity in subduing the earth. Certainly it is a matter of a life's companion, with whom as a wife the man can unite himself, becoming with her one flesh, and for this reason leaving his father and his mother. So John Paul II says the definition of the human person is not so much he's a rational and free creature or a rational animal, but that we're meant to love and be loved, and that our very bodies show this. He says, in the prophetic text, the human body speaks a language of which it is not the author. Its author is man, as male and female, as bridegroom or bride. man with his perennial vocation to the communion of persons. Yet man is in some sense unable to express the singular language of his personal existence and vocation without the body. He talks about the body being the expression of the human person. You know the phrase body language. You shake someone's hand, it means something. You give them a kiss on the cheek, it means something. Punch them in the nose, it means something. Or you're all very receptive people. Christy, I'm not sure about you, but most, and you too, we say, but it's a relaxed folding of the arms. I've been in many assemblies with priests who sit in the back. Yeah, and it's like this, that the body language is very clear. I don't want to hear what you have to say. I'm not going to receive it. I don't want it, all right? So with our bodies, we convey something. John Paul II says our very bodies reveal to us something about who we are, right? They reveal to us that we're meant to love and be loved. So he speaks about the spousal meaning of the body. He says our very bodies show us that we're meant to be in spousal relationships. Again, whether it's a marriage or whether it's committing your life to service to others, being a priest or a nun or just a person who lives a life of complete self-giving to others. It said the body is an outward sign of an inner reality. Adam and Eve were made for each other. They are complete only as a whole, and that we're all meant to give to others and to receive from others. So we have this beautiful rendering of the innocence and the harmony between Adam and Eve in paradise. Total, no stress, no tension between them, just complete a oneness, and naked without shame. No exploitation of the other, no using the other, just totally in love. Again, original innocence, they were naked and felt no shame. They had no disordered passions, right? Original unity, they were one in their thoughts. Adam and Eve did not misunderstand each other, all right? They could participate in the freedom of the gift. They weren't lusting after each other or anyone else. They could make a complete gift of themselves to each other. They were transparent to each other. They weren't hiding anything. They were a communion of persons. They were going forward together. They did not use each other. They simply delighted in each other. All right. Oh, that slide must be so good. Came up twice. Yeah, marriage is just a legal contract in the modern world, and for the Christian, it's indissoluble. In a certain sense, it's a kind of insanity. You know, who would, as the followers of Jesus said, if there's not going to be divorce, who would get married? Who would be so insane to put their whole future in happiness into the hands of another person? And a person with whom they're probably so smitten because of the chemistry that you hardly can make a rational decision, right? True, right? So, but the church says, no, we can do it. We can do it. God wants this relationship. He's going to give you the graces. It's a sacrament. It's a sacrament that comes with graces to help. You're not doing it on your own, but it comes with graces. So I'm going to do a quick philosophical anthropology here. For some of you have had a little philosophy, but everybody should have a little. Philosophy says that the soul is the form of the body. Everything is made up of form and matter, and essence and matter. Male and female are of the same species, they're of the same kind. They have the same form or the same soul, a human soul, capable of thinking, choosing freely, loving, and creating. I don't want to say it's a sexless human soul, but in a certain sense it is. It's a rational soul. There's big debates about this. But anyway, what it means is that when I was conceived, I received this soul. There's some people want to say it was a female soul, but some people want to say it's a male, it's a neutered soul in a certain sense. It's a rational soul. But the point is, from the minute I am conceived, everything comes to me through a female body. And everything that comes into my whole system comes through a female body. Different hormones, different structure of my brain, different structure of my body. So I'm female through and through, because everything that comes into my mind and that shapes my spirit, impacts my spirit, comes through a female body. We're essentially equal, but we are different. All right, we're going to skip that one. All right. We're going to skip that. All right, go to church documents. Do a quick run through for what some church documents say about sexual identity. Costi Canubi, back in 1930, says this, the subjection of one male to female. female to male. That's a Freudian slip if ever there was one. Right? This subjection of female to male, however, does not deny or take away the liberty which fully belongs to the woman, both in view of her dignity as a human person and in view of her most noble office as wife and mother and companion. Nor does it bid her obey her husband's every request if it's not in harmony with right reason or with the dignity due to the wife. So important that any subjection there is of the female to the male can never be against right reason or against a woman's dignity. People often ask me about the morality of different sexual acts. And I say, well, is that against the natural law? And I said, well, blah, blah, blah. I said, but let's ask whether it's in accord with the dignity of the woman. What does she feel? Does she feel that she's being honored when she's being asked to participate in a certain act? Or does she find it degrading? That's part of the whole picture. That's what the church is saying. It's not just the woman does whatever the man wants. It has to be in accord with right reason and with her dignity. It says, nor in find it as, I will skip on, but okay. The relationship, the freedom of the woman forbids that exaggerated liberty which cares not for the good of the family. And that's true for both man and woman. They have to put the good of the family ahead of their own good. It forbids that in this body, which is the family, the heart be separated from the head to the great detriment of the whole body and the proximate danger of ruin. For if the man is the head, the woman is the heart. Now, there's many people with many different views in this world, but almost every woman I know, maybe even every, I don't say I know all kinds of women, a woman would rather be the heart than the head. If you said you can choose, do you want to be the head or the heart? Oh, I want to be the heart, right? Heart is loving. Head is thinking. I love thinking myself. I love it as much as I can. But the heart, and as he occupies the chief place in ruling or ordering, governing, so she may and ought to claim for herself the chief place in love. She wants her job, honestly, is to create a loving atmosphere in this family. All right, you come home, you know you're loved. You know this house is all about love, right? And that's the woman's job. It doesn't mean that she can't earn money, manage the finances, plan the vacations. All right, it doesn't mean any of that. But her first responsibility is to make certain that this family and this home is an oasis of love in the world. The Catechism says sexuality affects all aspects of the human person in the unity of his body and soul. It especially concerns affectivity, the capacity to love and to procreate, and in a more general way, the aptitude for forming bonds of communion with others. This is very important. Everyone, man and woman, should acknowledge and accept his sexual identity. Now, in our culture, where we're told that we can choose our sexual identity, this is a radically contrary to our culture. And so if you have I'm sure other women in this room, was an incredible tomboy when I was a girl. I mean, I just wanted to play with the boys and climb trees and play baseball. And then when I was 11, my mother had a baby. And I became little mother, right? All I wanted to do was take care of that baby. The coincidence of my mother having a baby and my hormones kicking in just meant it didn't mean I didn't want to play ball or anything else anymore, but hold the baby or play ball, hold the baby, right? It all of a sudden, and you see this, again, too many young people grow up in families with only one boy and one girl or two boys and two girls. And they don't have the experience of having a much younger brother or sister. I mean, I, in a certain sense, at that point, I joined the adult team, right? I joined the adult team. All of a sudden, I became responsible. I knew how to take care of someone else. I wanted to take care of someone else, right? And so this notion of accepting sexual identity should be a very natural movement in people's lives. Largely come, I mean, all sorts of preparation, obviously, you know psychology better than I do, but all sorts of preparation in your prepubescent stage. But when the hormones hit, I mean, that's when there's this sudden sort of, I'm a male, I'm a female, right? I'm different. I'm joining this particular team, this group that I'm with. It says physical, moral and spiritual difference and complementarity are oriented toward the goods of marriage and the flourishing of family life. A man asked me yesterday at a talk I gave, like, how do you deal with so many of these questions with young kids, morality, sexuality? I say, my father and mother, John and Ann Smith, right? The simplicity and plainness there is absolutely appropriate for our world. And John Smith, my father, he practiced what I consider the male father default mode of parenting, which I say is ranting and raving. Not mean spirited, but sort of like, I can't believe he's left his wife. I can't believe he's left his children. What kind of man is he? He would say about someone. I remember driving down the street and he'd see a woman or a girl immodestly clad, and he would say, "Where's that girl's father? Any father who loved his daughter would not let her go out like that." I mean, the message we got was incredible. It wasn't to say anything about her. It was to say something about her father. Who's her father? My mother was always singing my father's praises. Your father's a wonderful man. You butter his bread how he wants it because he does everything for us. Forget about butter, but I'm buttering the bread how I want about it. No, you butter it for your father. He's your father, right? So we got this constant sort of my mother's stream of consciousness, my father sort of ranting and raving. But early on, saying, look at that man. He's a wonderful man. You want to marry a man like that. Or to the boy, look what that father is. What a husband he is. You want to be like that. I'm trying to be like that, Dad says. I want to be a great husband and father. I hope you want to too. And so to make that a constant part of your framework of your life is that we're all oriented to being wonderful spouses and wonderful parents. And I believe if you don't get married, all those virtues and characteristics that you need to be a wonderful father and a wonderful mother are going to do you well in this world. All right, the harmony of the couple and of society depends in part on the way in which the complementary needs and mutual support between the sexes are lived out. Right, I'm gonna just see if there's something I really want to tell you here. I've said a lot of this already. This is Pope Francis in Amoris Laetitia. Again, this notion of accepting. He says, beyond the understandable difficulties which individuals may experience, the young need to be helped to accept their own body as it was created. For thinking that we enjoy absolute power over our own bodies turns often subtly into thinking that we enjoy absolute power over creation. An appreciation of our body as male and female is also necessary for our own self-awareness as an encounter with others different from ourselves. He says, in this way we can joyfully accept the specific gifts of another man or woman, the work of God the Creator, and find mutual enrichment. Only by losing the fear of being different can we be freed of self-centeredness and self-absorption. Sex education should help young people to accept their own bodies and to avoid the pretension to cancel out their sexual differences because one no longer knows how to deal with it. I have a whole talk this talk is twice as long as what I just gave. And I would be talking about some of different meanings of gender. And it is certainly true that we have to be very careful not to buy into stereotypical views of what's masculine and feminine, right? That if a boy is not athletic, all right, he's a gentle soul, all right, and he might like things like working with flowers or cooking, right, and he's beginning to think he's not fully masculine because he's not out with his dad, rough and tumble play with other guys, right, and you say, oh, his masculinity needs to be affirmed again, and what is that? I mean, it really is a matter of being responsible and protective, right, and caring for others in the protective ways that males do, and to help him see that he has that in him. He doesn't have to throw a football, right? He doesn't have to knock someone over to be these things. There's many women, that are married to men that you can look at and say, I don't quite see the masculinity there, but she does, right? She does. She sees a man who's dependable, considerate, thinks of others, takes a leadership role, right? So he may not be, Mr. Marlboro Man, right? But she can say he's as masculine as I want in my life. He's very masculine. Same thing with females. One of my childhood friends, total tomboy, never changed. I suspect she's worn a skirt only in a mandatory way in her life. I mean, she's always only worn slacks. She's an outdoor person. She goes to the gym several hours a day, and her husband just loves her this way because he wants a companion that climbs mountains with him and rides bikes and does adventures, right? And so to think that you have to be pink bows in your hair and pink and all glitter and all this stuff to be feminine, it's just totally false. And people that can help. Sometimes a woman or a man who's having trouble really identifying as male, you can't push them too far into those things, but say, make your dress a little more feminine, or, dress a little bit more masculine, and it just as anything, you put on a uniform, you put on your habit, you feel different because of the way that you're dressed, and it can help. But we have to be careful that the accepting your body, you're saying, my body is really accepting myself as someone that's made to be a gift to others, right? And as a female, my giving is largely, it's going to be thousands of things, but not to include a kind of nurturing element would be wrong, right? Because that's what women are. Our very nature, our whole bodies are clearly meant for others. I know women who've had 6 children or so, and I say, who owns your body? And she says, everybody owns my body, right? The doctors, the nurses, the babies, the kids, the husband, her body's no longer her own. It's for others, right? And the man less so that way, but he gets up in the morning and does his work and his job, and he's tired and he's fatigued, and he's giving his body for others. It's his givingness. Who are you living for? I mean, you see it happen to men and women when they get married. A couple kids later, they haven't had a moment to themselves for years, right? They're totally giving of themselves to others. All right, well, I'm going to stop here so we can have some time for